From my earliest memories, the contrast between how they treated me and my younger sister Katie was stark and painful. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how my own family betrayed me, and how I rose above it all. Katie was born just a year after me, and from the moment she arrived, it was clear she would be the golden child. Our parents, Mark and Sarah Harrison, showered her with attention while I lingered in the shadows. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment seemed to revolve around Katie. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. While Katie had received a lavish party with bouncy castles and professional entertainers just months before, my celebration consisted of a simple cake after dinner. "We're a bit tight on money this month," Emily, Mom had said, though somehow they managed to buy Katie a new iPad the following week. The disparity went beyond material things. When Katie spoke at dinner, our parents hung on her every word. When I tried to share my day, Dad would often cut me off with a distracted "that's nice, honey," while scrolling through his phone. The weight of their indifference was crushing. But the most frustrating part was the food situation. Katie had a severe peanut allergy, and instead of just managing her diet separately, my parents enforced a complete peanut ban in our house. I loved peanut butter sandwiches, they were my favorite lunch, but I wasn't allowed to have them, even at school. "It's not fair," I remember telling my grandmother Rose one afternoon while helping her bake cookies. "Why do I have to eat everything Katie eats? I don't have allergies." Grandma Rose was my sanctuary, the one person who saw me for who I was. Her warm kitchen became my refuge, a place where I could speak freely without fear of being dismissed or overlooked. "Your parents are making a mistake, sweetheart," she'd say, her wise eyes filled with understanding. "They think they're doing what's best, but they're not seeing how it affects you." I watched her measure flour into a bowl, the familiar motions comforting. Yesterday, Mom bought Katie new dance shoes because she said she might want to take lessons. But when I asked to join the science club, she said it was too expensive. Grandma Rose's face hardened. "I've tried talking to your mother about this, Emily. Just last week, I told her she needs to treat you both equally." "But Sarah," she sighed, shaking her head. "She claims Katie is more talented, more outgoing. Says you're too introverted, that it's harder to connect with you." Her words stung, but they weren't surprising. I'd overheard similar conversations before, my parents discussing how Katie was the special one, the daughter with all the potential. Meanwhile, I was just there. The quiet one, the less talented one. The one they had to accommodate but never really saw. While Katie's schedule was packed with dance classes, piano lessons, and art workshops, I spent my afternoons alone in my room, watching life pass by through my window. "Katie has such natural talent," Mom would gush at dinner. "Her dance instructor says she could go professional someday." Dad would beam with pride, while I pushed my food around my plate, invisible as always. But everything changed when I turned 12. Grandma Rose showed up one Saturday morning, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "Get your coat, Emily," she announced. "I've enrolled you in the Advanced Young Scientists program at the community center." That program changed my life. Suddenly, I was immersed in a world of experiments, equations, and endless possibilities. Our instructor, Dr. Chen, didn't see a quiet introvert, he saw a curious mind hungry for knowledge. When I correctly solved a complex algebra problem in my first week, he high-fived me in front of the whole class. By 14, I wasn't just excelling in science and math, I was standing at podiums, articulating arguments about climate change and social justice. People actually listened when I spoke. The shy girl who used to hide in her room was gone, replaced by someone confident, someone with opinions and the courage to express them. Emily's presentation on renewable energy was outstanding, my debate coach told my parents at a school meeting. "She has a real future in scientific research if she wants it." I'll never forget Katie's face that day, the way her smile tightened, her eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to sharing the spotlight, and my growing popularity at school clearly bothered her. The changes were obvious to everyone. People started stopping by my locker between classes. I was elected to the student council. Suddenly, I had friends who valued my opinions, who invited me to study groups and weekend hangouts. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. That's when Katie started her whisper campaign. "Mom, Dad," I heard her one evening, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I saw Emily behind the gym today. She was kissing Tommy Martinez. And last week, it was Jake from her debate team." I burst into the kitchen. "That's a lie. I've never." "Katie wouldn't make this up," Mom cut me off. "She's worried about you, Emily. These boys, these late-night study sessions, it's not appropriate." "But I'm just..." "No more going out after 6, Dad announced. And we'll be monitoring your phone calls from now on. It's for your own good, Emily." "What about my debate team meetings? My science club?" "You can participate in school activities," Mom said. "But afterward, you come straight home. No exceptions." I looked at Katie, who was hiding a smirk behind her hand. She'd won again, and we both knew it. My newfound freedom was being stripped away, all because of her lies. As we grew up, Katie's antagonism toward me grew more pronounced. It wasn't enough for her to control my social life through our parents. She started targeting my belongings and the few friendships I'd managed to maintain despite the restrictions. One morning, I found my science project drenched in water, the careful calculations I'd spent weeks on bleeding into illegible smears. Another time, my favorite sweater, a birthday gift from Grandma Rose, mysteriously ended up with bleach stains. But the worst was what she did to my friendship with Rachel. We'd been close since middle school, bonding over our love of biology and bad reality TV shows. Rachel was one of the few friends who stuck by me despite Katie's previous rumors, but even she had her breaking point. "How could you?" Rachel confronted me one day at my locker, her eyes filled with tears. "Katie told me everything, how you write about Matt in your diary, how you're planning to steal him from me." "Rachel, that's insane. I don't even have a diary, and I've never." But Rachel was already walking away, leaving me standing alone in the hallway. That evening, I cornered Katie in her room. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. "Why do you have to destroy everything good in my life?" "You're paranoid, Emily," she replied coolly. "Maybe if you stopped obsessing over me and making up stories, you'd have more friends." I wanted to scream. Somehow, she always managed to twist things around, making me sound like the crazy one. And our parents? They never questioned her version of events. Then came Katie's 15th birthday. Mom spent days preparing for it, determined to make it perfect. The house was decorated with pink and gold balloons, and relatives filled every corner of our living room. The cake was Mom's masterpiece, 3 tiers of vanilla buttercream, Katie's favorite. Everyone gathered around to sing "Happy Birthday," and Katie blew out her candles to enthusiastic applause. But something was wrong. After a few bites, Katie's face changed. Her hand went to her throat, her eyes widening in panic. Mom recognized the signs immediately, an allergic reaction. "The EpiPen," Dad shouted, already running for Katie's emergency kit. Mom held Katie's hand while Dad administered the injection, and gradually, her breathing steadied. The party atmosphere evaporated instantly. Relatives huddled in concerned groups, while my parents tried to understand what had happened. "How did peanuts get in the cake?" Mom kept asking, checking and rechecking her recipe. I was so careful. That's when Katie spoke up, her voice still raspy. "I saw Emily in the kitchen earlier. She was doing something with the cake." "What? No," I protested. "I wasn't even near the cake." But Katie pressed on. "Check her purse," she whispered. "The blue one, by the door." Dad grabbed my purse before I could react. And there it was, a small jar of peanut butter, one I'd never seen before, sitting right on top of my wallet. "She could have died," Dad's voice boomed through the living room. "What were you thinking, Emily?" I stood there, trembling, as my parents hurled accusations at me. The jar of peanut butter in Dad's hand might as well have been a smoking gun. "I didn't do it," I repeated, my voice getting smaller each time. Please, you have to believe me. Katie sat on the couch, an oxygen mask still near her face, but I caught the slight upturn of her lips. She was enjoying this, enjoying watching my world crumble around me. Our relatives shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Aunt Jane pulled her daughter closer, as if I might try to poison her next. Uncle Bob wouldn't even meet my eyes. The only person who moved toward me instead of away was Grandma Rose. Now wait just a minute, Grandma's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone needs to calm down and think about this rationally. Did anyone see Emily put it there? This needs to be properly investigated. Everything is already clear, Dad interrupted. Emily, go to your room. We'll deal with this later. The next few days were a nightmare. At home, my parents acted like I was invisible. They'd leave the room when I entered, lock away all the food, and whisper behind closed doors. At school, word spread quickly. People moved away when I walked down the hallways, as if attempted murder was contagious. After 3 days of this torture, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Katie alone in her room, scrolling through her phone. You need to tell them the truth, I said, closing the door behind me. This has gone far enough. Katie looked up, and the smile she gave me was chilling. You know what's funny, she said, setting her phone down. I've been planning this for months. Waiting for the perfect moment. The birthday party was just perfect timing. Something snapped inside me. Years of pent-up frustration, anger, and hurt exploded. I lunged at her, grabbing her shoulders. We crashed to the floor, knocking over her bedside lamp. The noise brought our parents running. They found us wrestling on the ground, both screaming. She confessed, I shouted as Dad pulled me off Katie. She just told me she planned the whole thing. She planted the peanut butter in my purse. Stop lying, Katie shrieked, crocodile tears already flowing. See? She's crazy. She attacked me. That's enough. Mom's voice was ice cold. Pack your things, Emily. We can't have you in this house anymore. What? No, please. You're dangerous, Dad declared. We'll call your grandmother. Either she picks you up by morning, or we're calling social services. I fell to my knees, begging them to listen, to understand. But their faces were stone. Katie stood behind them, and through my tears, I could see her satisfied smile. Grandma arrived at dawn, her ancient station wagon idling in our driveway. As I loaded my hastily packed bags into her car, she confronted my parents one last time. What you're doing is despicable, she told them. You're choosing to believe a lie over your own daughter. Someday you'll realize what you've done, and it'll be too late. They didn't respond. They just stood in the doorway, Katie between them, watching as Grandma drove me away from the only home I'd ever known. Living with Grandma Rose was like finally being able to breathe after years of suffocation. Within a month, she had legally adopted me, handled all the paperwork for my transfer to Riverside High School, and converted her sewing room into my bedroom. At Riverside, nobody knew about the birthday party incident or Katie's lies. I was just the new girl with good grades and a quiet smile. Slowly, I started making friends again, real friends this time, who didn't have Katie whispering poison in their ears. I threw myself into my studies with renewed passion. Without Katie's drama and my parents' constant criticism, I flourished. My SAT scores were nearly perfect. I graduated as valedictorian, my speech focusing on resilience and the power of second chances. My parents didn't come to the graduation ceremony. I'd sent them an invitation, more out of formality than hope, but received no response. It hurt, but less than I expected. Grandma Rose's proud tears as I accepted my diploma meant more than their absence. I'd been accepted to several prestigious medical programs, but the tuition fees were daunting. Before I could even mention student loans, Grandma Rose pulled out a folder. I've been saving for this since you were 12, she said, showing me her college fund for me. I always knew you were meant for great things. Those 4 years of dental school were intense but rewarding. I lived in a tiny apartment near campus, worked part-time at a cafe, and studied until my eyes burned. Through it all, Grandma Rose was my rock, listening to my excited phone calls about successful procedures, and never once doubting my chosen path. I had no contact with my parents or Katie during this time. Sometimes I'd see updates about them on social media: Katie's job at a local retail store, Mom's garden club awards, Dad's bowling league victories. I'd scroll past them quickly, refusing to let their lives intersect with mine. Finally, after years of hard work, I held my dental license in my hands. My first job offer came from Brighton Dental Associates, one of the most respected private practices in the city. I posted a photo of my diploma and license on Facebook, adding a simple caption: Dr. Emily Harrison, DDS. Dreams do come true. The response was overwhelming. Old school friends, distant relatives, even my third-grade teacher left congratulatory comments. Aunt Jane, who'd pulled her daughter away from me at that fateful birthday party, wrote, "We're all so proud of you, Emily." Uncle Bob posted, "Incredible achievement, kiddo." Looking at those messages, I realized something profound. I'd done more than just survive my family's betrayal, I'd transformed it into fuel for my success. My phone rang on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The number was familiar, though I hadn't seen it flash across my screen in years. Mom. My hand shook as I debated whether to answer. "Hello?" I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Emily, sweetie." Mom's voice was syrupy sweet, the tone she used to use when asking Katie's teachers for deadline extensions. "We saw your announcement about becoming a dentist. We're so proud of you." I said nothing, waiting. "We've been thinking about you," she continued, filling my silence. "Your father and I, well, we'd love to have you over for dinner. Just to catch up. As a family." I shouldn't have agreed. Every instinct told me to decline. But curiosity, or maybe that stubborn little part of me that still craved their approval, won out. "What time?" I heard myself asking. The next evening, I pulled up to my childhood home in my new Mercedes. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling slightly around the windows. I dressed carefully: designer blouse, tailored pants, the pearl earrings Grandma Rose had given me for graduation. Armor, in its own way. Mom opened the door before I could knock. "Emily." She moved as if to hug me, then seemed to think better of it. Come in, you look so professional." Dad stood awkwardly in the living room. "Hey, kiddo." He'd aged more than I expected, his hair completely gray now, new lines around his eyes. "Is Katie joining us?" I asked, noting the table was set for 3. "Oh, no, she's busy tonight," Mom said quickly. "I made your favorite, pot roast." "Well, what used to be your favorite?" Dinner was a strange dance of forced smiles and careful questions. They asked about dental school, about my practice, about where I was living now. I answered politely but briefly, offering no openings for deeper conversation. "So," Dad said, pushing his potatoes around his plate, "dentistry must be lucrative?" And there it was. "I do all right," I replied neutrally. "She drives a Mercedes, Mark," Mom commented, as if I wasn't sitting right there. "And you mentioned an apartment, Emily?" "Yes, I bought a place downtown." "With a mortgage, of course." They exchanged glances. Mom set down her fork with a sigh that seemed rehearsed. "Emily, we've been having some difficulties," she began. "Your father, well, the company downsized last month. And my arthritis is making it harder to maintain my full schedule at the salon." "That must be tough," I said, taking a sip of water. "We were wondering." Dad cleared his throat. "That is, maybe you could." "Have you asked Katie for help?" I interrupted. Mom's face fell. "Katie's struggling too. Retail doesn't pay much, and she's barely making ends meet as it is." I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. "Well, I'm sorry to hear about your situation, but I won't be able to help." I heard them calling after me as I walked to my car, but I didn't look back. The message from Mom came during my lunch break at the clinic. Emily, we need $20,000. Your father and I are about to lose the house. As our daughter, you have an obligation to help us. I stared at my phone, a strange calm settling over me. Finally, an opportunity. I'll give you the money, I typed back, on one condition: publicly admit on social media that I never put peanuts in Katie's birthday cake. Admit that you threw me out of the house because of Katie's lies. Tell everyone the truth. The typing bubble appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, after what seemed like hours, her response came through: we can't do that. It would destroy our family's reputation in the community. People would judge us. Surely you understand? I laughed without humor. Then you understand that I won't be giving you any money. Surely you understand? The response was immediate this time: after everything we've done for you. I turned off my phone and went back to work. 2 hours later, during my afternoon break, I saw Katie's name light up my screen. Something made me hit the record button before answering. Hello, Katie. You heartless bitch, she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. Mom's crying because of you. They're about to lose everything, and you're playing games? I'm not playing games, I replied calmly. I'm asking for the truth. I want them to admit what they did to me. What you did to me. Never going to happen, sis. You know why? Because it would hurt me. And they'll never do anything to hurt their precious Katie. Her voice took on a sing-song quality. They've always loved me more, you know. Even after I told them about the peanut butter. My heart stopped. What do you mean? Oh, didn't you know? She laughed again, the sound chilling. A few months after you left, I told them I planted that jar in your purse. They didn't even care. Dad just said it was probably for the best that you were gone anyway. That's how much they prefer me over you. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. You admitted it to them? Of course I did. I was so proud of my plan, I had to tell someone. And guess what? They didn't care. Each word was punctuated with malicious glee. They'll never admit it publicly because it would make me look bad. So you can forget about your little confession demand. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, the recording safely saved. After all these years, I finally had proof. My sister's voice, admitting to everything: the setup, the lies, our parents' willful blindness. With steady hands, I crafted the Facebook post that would change everything. No dramatics, no accusations, just the truth, finally set free. Many of you remember the incident at my sister's 15th birthday party, I wrote. The day my parents kicked me out of their house for allegedly trying to harm my sister with peanuts. For years, I've carried the weight of that false accusation. Today, I'm sharing my story not out of vengeance, but because the truth deserves to be heard. I detailed everything: the years of favoritism, Katie's escalating lies, my parents' blind devotion to her. I explained how they'd recently reached out, not to apologize, but to demand $20,000 from me. And now, I wrote, I have proof of what really happened that day. Listen to this recent conversation with my sister. I attached the audio file. Katie's voice, clear as day, bragging about planting the peanut butter in my purse. Admitting that our parents knew the truth but chose to protect her anyway. The cruel laugh as she described their indifference to ruining my life. Within minutes, the post exploded. Aunt Jane wrote a lengthy apology. Uncle Bob called me directly, his voice thick with tears as he expressed his regret for believing the lies. Even my old friend Rachel reached out, finally understanding why our friendship had really ended. Then came the angry messages from my family. Take that down immediately, Mom demanded via text. You're destroying this family, Dad bellowed in a voicemail. I'll sue you for recording me without permission, Katie threatened. I responded to them all with the same message: all communications are being recorded and archived. My lawyer has copies of everything. Any threats or harassment will be dealt with legally. Please do not contact me again unless it's through proper legal channels. They must have finally realized I wasn't that powerless teenage girl anymore. The messages stopped. The calls ended. The social media harassment ceased. Grandma Rose came over the night after I made the post, carrying a bottle of champagne. "To the truth," she said, pouring us each a glass. "And to you, my brave girl. I couldn't have done any of this without you," I told her, fighting back tears. "You were the only one who believed in me when everyone else turned away." She took my hand, her eyes bright with pride. "I never doubted you for a second. And look at you now, successful, strong, finally free of their lies. Do you think they'll ever admit what they did? Try to make amends?" Grandma Rose shook her head. "Some people would rather live with their lies than face the truth about themselves. But that's their burden to bear, not yours." She was right, of course. She usually is. My parents and Katie chose their path long ago, just as I chose mine. They'll have to live with the consequences of their choices, just as I built a life from mine. These days, I focus on my practice, my friends, and my relationship with Grandma Rose, the one true parent I've ever known. The past doesn't haunt me anymore. My name is Ruby, and I came into this world as an apparent afterthought, 12 years after my eldest sister Sarah and 10 years after Emma. By the time I was forming my first coherent memories, they were already deep into their teenage years, more interested in boys and makeup than playing with their baby sister. Our house in suburban Minnesota was always filled with the echoes of my parents' pride in their older daughters. Sarah got straight A's again, they'd beam at dinner. Emma made the cheerleading squad, they'd announce to anyone who'd listen. I'd sit there, pushing peas around my plate, feeling like a shadow in my own home. I remember the day Sarah brought home her first boyfriend at 16. I was just 4, peeking through the banister rails as this tall boy with spiky hair nervously shook hands with our dad. Emma wasn't far behind, starting to date at 15. They were both so beautiful, so confident, so everything I wasn't yet. "Ruby, finish your homework," Mom would say, barely glancing my way as she helped Sarah pick out prom dresses or discussed college applications with Emma. I learned early on to be self-sufficient, to do my own thing, to not need the attention that seemed permanently focused on my sister's achievements. "Did you hear?" Mom burst into the kitchen one morning when I was 7. "Sarah got accepted to Northwestern." The news was followed by celebratory pancakes, while I sat in my usual spot, invisible as always. Emma left for college 2 years later, and suddenly, I was alone in a house that felt both too empty and too full of their lingering presence. Their rooms became shrines to their past lives, trophies, photos, and memories preserved exactly as they'd left them. Meanwhile, I carved out my own space, learned to find comfort in solitude, and tried not to mind when every conversation somehow circled back to my amazing older sisters. The real turning point came when I was 15. Sarah, now married and living across town, gave birth to her first child, a boy named Tyler. I still remember the day she brought him home from the hospital, everyone cooing and crying, my parents practically floating with joy at becoming grandparents. "You'll be such a wonderful aunt," Mom said, squeezing my shoulder. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment everything started to shift, though I couldn't have known it then. At first, I was genuinely excited about being an aunt. Tyler was adorable, and I loved making silly faces at him while Sarah and Mom chatted over coffee. But that dynamic shifted faster than I could have imagined. It started with what seemed like an innocent request one Saturday morning. "Ruby, could you watch Tyler for a couple hours? I really need to do some shopping," Sarah asked, already putting her purse over her shoulder. Before I could even respond, she'd placed Tyler in my arms and was heading for the door. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." That became the new normal. Every weekend, Sarah would show up at our parents' house, hand over Tyler, and disappear for hours. Sometimes it was shopping, other times it was lunch with friends or a spa day, always under the guise of needing a break from motherhood. "It's not fair," I complained to Mom one day after Sarah had been gone for 5 hours. I had plans to meet Jenny at the mall today. Mom barely looked up from her magazine. Family helps family, Ruby. Your sister needs this time to herself. You'll understand when you're a mother. I was 16 when Emma announced she was pregnant. It's a girl, she squealed at the family dinner. While everyone celebrated, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Sure enough, when little Sophie arrived, history repeated itself with a vengeance. Now my weekends were a circus of managing a 3-year-old Tyler and baby Sophie. Try helping a toddler build block towers while trying to keep a crying infant calm. It's not as fun as it sounds. And homework? Forget about it until they were both napping, if they ever napped at the same time. Jason asked me to the movies tonight, I told Dad one Saturday, while bouncing Sophie on my hip and watching Tyler color on our coffee table instead of his coloring book. Well, you should have thought about that before agreeing to watch the kids, he replied. I never agreed. Nobody ever asks me. The frustration in my voice made Sophie start crying. Lower your voice, you're upsetting the baby, Mom scolded from the kitchen. And stop being selfish. Your sisters need this support. I started spending my free time in the school library, researching colleges. Not just any colleges, ones far away from home. I threw myself into studying, knowing good grades were my ticket out. Every A on my report card was one step closer to freedom. When my acceptance letter from Berkeley arrived, including a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. But my family had other plans. The community college here has a great business program, Sarah suggested during what they called a family council, but I called an intervention. You could live at home and save money. And help with the kids, Emma added brightly, as if that was a selling point. I looked around our living room at their expectant faces, Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma, and Grandma Rose, who'd been unusually quiet throughout the discussion. Actually, Grandma Rose's voice cut through the tension like a knife. I think Berkeley is perfect for Ruby. Everyone turned to stare at her. That program is exactly what she needs for her future career. And your grandfather's education fund will help cover what the scholarship doesn't. I could have hugged her right then. The family council ended with my parents and sisters shooting disappointed looks my way, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I could see my future clearly, and it didn't involve being everyone's free babysitter. College life was everything I'd dreamed of and more. My dorm room became my sanctuary, my classmates became real friends, and for the first time in years, my weekends were my own. No crying babies, no sticky-fingered toddlers, just me and my choices. But you can't completely escape family obligations, especially during the holidays. I tried to visit as little as possible, but Thanksgiving and Christmas were non-negotiable. Mom would call weeks in advance, her voice thick with expectation. Everyone's asking about you, Ruby. The kids miss their aunt. The first Christmas break after I started college, I walked into absolute chaos. Sarah now had 2 boys, Tyler and his new baby brother Luke, while Emma had managed to add a boy named Max to her family alongside Sophie. But that wasn't even the half of it. Ruby, Aunt Janet called out the moment I walked through the door, immediately steering her twin 5-year-olds in my direction. The kids have been asking about you. No, they haven't, I thought. They barely know who I am. But before I could protest, Cousin Rachel's 7-year-old daughter attached herself to my leg, followed closely by Cousin Mike's 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. Ruby, honey, Mom called from the kitchen, barely visible behind a mountain of dishes. Why don't you take the kids upstairs to your room? I'll bring up some snacks later. And just like that, I was corralling 8 children up the stairs, feeling more like a sheepdog than a college student. My old bedroom became a war zone, toys everywhere, juice spills on my childhood bedspread, crayon marks appearing mysteriously on the walls. Hours passed. My stomach growled as delicious smells wafted up from downstairs, where the adults were enjoying their peaceful holiday meal. When Mom finally appeared with a plate of kid-friendly snacks, she barely made eye contact. By the time I managed to sneak downstairs at 8 o'clock, after coordinating with various parents to collect their exhausted children, The dining room was empty except for dirty dishes and picked-over serving platters. "Oh, Ruby," Emma said, already putting on her coat. "Max was an angel for you, right? We've got to run, it's past his bedtime." Sarah followed suit, gathering her boys, while chatting with Mom about New Year's plans. Aunt Janet was helping her twins into their snow boots, while cousins Rachel and Mike were carrying their sleeping children to their cars. Not a single thank you. Not one person asked if I'd eaten. Not even a backwards glance as they all filed out, leaving me standing in the wreckage of Christmas dinner. "Ruby, be a dear and help me with these dishes," Mom called from the kitchen, as if I hadn't just spent the entire day doing her a massive favor. I looked at the mountain of dirty plates and serving dishes, evidence of a holiday meal I never got to enjoy. The message from Mom arrived during finals week, just as I was finishing my last paper for the semester. My phone buzzed with her usual pre-holiday update, but this one made my blood run cold. "Sarah and Emma are coming with the kids," it read cheerfully. "Plus Janet and her twins, Rachel's girls, Mike's kids, and exciting news. Sarah's sister-in-law Lisa is joining us with her 3. It'll be such a wonderful Christmas with all the little ones." I did the math in my head, 12 kids. 12. I sat there in the library, staring at my phone until the screen went dark, then lit it up again to make sure I'd read it right. The message stayed the same, but something inside me finally changed. 2 years of college had given me perspective. I'd watched my roommate Kate go home for holidays and return with stories of actual family time, board games, movie nights, proper Christmas dinners. My friend Jessica's biggest complaint about going home was having to share the TV remote with her siblings. Meanwhile, I'd spent every holiday of my adult life as an unpaid nanny service. I didn't reply to Mom's message. Instead, I packed my bag for Christmas break with an unusual sense of calm. For the first time, I wasn't dreading the holidays because I was going home with a plan. The days leading up to Christmas were deceptively normal. I helped Mom in the kitchen, breathing in the familiar sense of her signature dishes, pot roast, honey-glazed ham, and her famous apple pie. I decorated the Christmas tree, carefully hanging the ornaments I'd made in elementary school alongside the fancy glass balls Mom reserved for the front of the tree. Christmas Day arrived with a flurry of activity. Cars began pulling into our driveway one after another, each bringing more chaos than the last. Sarah arrived first with her boys, now 5 and 3, followed closely by Emma with Sophie and Max. Lisa, Sarah's sister-in-law, showed up with her 3 kids, all under 7. The rest of the relatives poured in after them, each family adding more children to the growing crowd. I watched from the corner of the living room as the noise level rose steadily. Sarah made her way toward me, her youngest balanced on her hip while the older one tugged at her sleeve. "Ruby," she called out with that familiar tone, the one that meant she was about to pass off her parental duties. "The boys have been so excited to see you. They can't wait to play with their favorite aunt." She was already nudging them in my direction, the same way she had 100 times before. But this time was different. This time, I stood my ground and looked her straight in the eye. "No," I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. "I'm not watching the kids today. I'm here to enjoy Christmas like everyone else." The room didn't exactly fall silent, there were too many children for that, but I could feel the ripple of shock move through the adults. Sarah's mouth dropped open. Mom froze in the doorway with a plate of cookies. Dad looked up from his newspaper with raised eyebrows. "But who's going to watch all the kids?" Emma's panicked voice carried across the living room as I turned toward the stairs. I glanced back just long enough to see Mom's helpless shrug and the bewildered looks on everyone's faces. The sight almost made me laugh, they looked like someone had just told them Christmas was cancelled. My feet carried me up the familiar stairs, past the family photos marking my sister's many achievements, and into my childhood bedroom. The soft click of the door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. I flopped onto my bed, the same twin bed I'd had since middle school, and let out a long breath. Downstairs, I could hear the muffled sounds of chaos, adult voices rising and falling, children crying, the occasional thump of something being dropped or thrown. Can you believe her? So selfish. In my day. The fragments of conversation that filtered up through the floor made me smile. Let them talk. Let them finally face the reality of watching their own children. My phone buzzed with a message from Kate. Did you do it? Did you finally stand up to them? Operation Freedom is in progress, I typed back. Currently hiding in my room while they figure out how to parent their own kids. A knock on my door interrupted my texting. Ruby? Mom's voice was trying for concerned but landed somewhere between annoyed and desperate. The children are asking for you. I didn't move from my comfortable position on the bed. I'm busy, Mom. Her sigh was audible through the door, followed by the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hallway. I returned to my phone, joining a group chat with my college friends who were providing running commentary on their own family Christmas dramas. Jessica's uncle was drunk again, Mike's grandma was asking when he'd find a nice girl, Kate's brother had brought home a surprise girlfriend. 2 hours passed like this, in peaceful rebellion. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from friends who'd heard me complain about holiday babysitting duty for years. The chaos downstairs eventually settled into a different rhythm, one that didn't include my participation. When I finally descended the stairs for dinner, you'd have thought I'd risen from the dead, judging by everyone's expressions. Aunt Janet actually dropped her fork. Cousin Rachel's mouth hung open mid-sentence. I scanned the dining room, noting Emma's conspicuous absence. Through the doorway to the living room, I could see her attempting to organize some kind of game with the children, her usually perfect hair coming loose from its elegant updo, a stain of unknown origin on her festive sweater. Taking my seat at the adult table, a first in recent memory, I surveyed the spread before me. Everything was still hot, still fresh, still waiting to be enjoyed. No lukewarm leftovers, no picked-over remnants, no half-eaten children's portions. I could feel the weight of disapproving stares as I filled my plate with Mom's honey-glazed ham, Aunt Janet's sweet potato casserole, and Cousin Rachel's famous green bean dish. The clinking of silverware against plates couldn't quite mask the tension in the room. I was halfway through enjoying my first proper holiday meal in years when Sarah finally snapped. She'd been watching me eat with the kind of intensity usually reserved for nature documentaries about predators and prey. Well, she announced to the table at large, her voice dripping with sarcasm, looks like someone's gotten a little too big for their boots at college. Seems they've forgotten all about sisterly duties. I took my time with my spoonful of mashed potatoes, deliberately licking the spoon clean before responding. The food really was excellent when you got to eat it fresh. Funny thing about sisterly duties, I replied, keeping my voice level and calm. I don't remember seeing free babysitter in any sisterhood manual. Maybe you could point that chapter out to me? Right after the part where parents are supposed to watch their own children? The gasps around the table would have been comical if they weren't so genuine. Aunt Janet actually clutched her pearls. I hadn't known people really did that outside of movies. Cousin Rachel was suddenly very interested in her green beans, while Uncle Mike seemed to be trying to disappear into his dinner roll. Mom and Dad exchanged that special look they had, the one that meant they were disappointed but didn't want to cause a scene. Dad's fork was frozen halfway to his mouth, and Mom's smile had gone tight around the edges. But instead of the lecture I expected, Mom cleared her throat and asked Uncle Mike about his new job. The conversation stuttered back to life, though everyone kept shooting glances my way as if expecting me to sprout a second head. I just kept eating, savoring every bite of food that hadn't been picked over by tiny hands or gone cold while I changed diapers. About 20 minutes into dinner, Emma appeared in the doorway, looking like she'd been through a war. Her Christmas sweater was now sporting what looked like juice stains in addition to the earlier unknown substance, and her hair had completely escaped its elegant updo. "Sarah," she called, her voice carrying a hint of desperation. "Could you?" Sarah shot me one last withering look before pushing back from the table. The sisters exchanged places, with Emma practically collapsing into the vacated chair. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired I'd been feeling every holiday for years. Emma filled her plate mechanically, but she couldn't seem to resist giving me the stink eye between bites. I met her gaze and shrugged, then went back to enjoying my dinner. After finishing my meal, including 2 servings of Mom's apple pie, a luxury I'd never been able to enjoy before, I quietly excused myself from the table. No one protested. No one asked me to help clean up. No one demanded I take a shift with the kids. Morning light filtered through the living room windows as I came downstairs, still riding the high of my peaceful Christmas evening. That feeling evaporated the moment I saw them, Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Emma, sitting in an obvious ambush formation. Sarah didn't waste any time. "What kind of performance was that yesterday?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Making us look like bad parents in front of everyone?" I sank into an armchair, surprisingly calm. "Performance? You mean me wanting to enjoy Christmas like everyone else? I'm just tired of being the unpaid, unappreciated babysitter while everyone else gets to have an actual holiday." "But you never complained before," Mom interjected, her brow furrowed with confusion. I couldn't help but laugh. "Never complained? I've been complaining for years, Mom. But it was just too convenient to ignore me, wasn't it? Too easy to keep exploiting the good little sister who never makes waves." They all started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chorus of accusations and reminders of sisterly duty and family obligation. Dad kept mentioning how much they'd done for me over the years, Mom brought up how well they'd raised me, and my sisters alternated between guilt trips and outright attacks. I let them run out of steam before speaking again. "They're not my children," I said quietly but firmly. "I didn't give birth to them. I didn't decide to have them. They're your responsibility, not mine. Especially during the holidays when I'm supposed to be relaxing too." That's when Sarah played what she thought was her trump card. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Well, maybe it's time someone taught you a lesson about gratitude. Let's see how you manage without Mom and Dad paying your college tuition." The room fell silent. I watched Mom and Dad exchange uncertain glances, clearly caught off guard by this suggestion. But instead of the panic Sarah clearly expected to see on my face, I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, all the cards were on the table. I stood up slowly. "Actually, Sarah, Grandma's been paying my tuition from Grandpa's education fund, you know, the one he set up for all his granddaughters? The same fund that helped put you through nursing school and Emma through business school? And even if that wasn't the case, I have a partial scholarship. Plus, unlike some people, I'm not afraid of working to support myself." Without waiting for their response, I turned and walked upstairs. It took me less than 10 minutes to pack my bags. I'd gotten good at traveling light over the years. As I came back down, Mom and Dad started calling after me, their voices a mixture of anger and panic. But I was done talking. I walked out the front door, letting it close behind me on their protests and recriminations. The winter air bit at my cheeks as I headed to my car, but I barely felt it. The drive back to campus was oddly peaceful. As the miles between me and home increased, I systematically blocked their numbers: Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma. Each tap on my phone screen felt like breaking another link in a chain I hadn't even realized was weighing me down. My dorm room welcomed me back with its blessed simplicity: no toys scattered across the floor, no sticky fingerprints on the windows, no constant background noise of children demanding attention. Just my books, my laptop, and my own thoughts. January passed in a blur of new classes and quiet weekends. February brought snow and a blessed lack of family drama. I threw myself into my studies, made plans with friends, and for the first time in years, felt like I was living my own life instead of existing in the margins of everyone else's. Then, one cold Saturday morning in late February, I looked out my dorm window and saw them, Mom, Dad, and Emma, standing in the parking lot, looking uncertain and out of place among the students rushing to and from classes. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, but something in their body language made me pause. They looked different. Smaller somehow. Less like authority figures, and more like people who'd driven 4 hours to right a wrong. I met them in the lobby. Emma spoke first. "Can we buy you coffee? We'd like to talk." The campus cafe was quiet that morning. We sat at a corner table, steam rising from our cups, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Mom was the first to break it. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. "After you left, well, we had some long conversations as a family." "Very long conversations," Emma added, meeting my eyes directly. "Ruby, we were wrong. All of us. We took advantage of you for years and called it family duty to make ourselves feel better about it." Dad cleared his throat. "We didn't realize, or maybe we didn't want to realize, how unfair it was. You deserved your own holidays, your own time. You deserved to be treated like an adult, not the family babysitter." I took a long sip of my coffee, letting their words sink in. "What about Sarah?" Emma sighed. "Sarah, she's still processing. You know how she is, she has trouble admitting when she's wrong. But the rest of us, we want to do better. Things will be different now," Mom promised. "No more pushing the kids on you. No more expecting you to give up your holidays. We want you to come home because you want to, not because you're needed for childcare." I studied their faces, the sincerity in Mom's eyes, the regret in Dad's expression, the openness in Emma's posture. "Okay," I said finally. "I believe you." That evening, after they'd left, I unblocked their numbers. Within minutes, I had a text from Emma, "Miss you, little sis. For real this time." The following months brought a new normal. I visited home some weekends, and it was actually pleasant. When Emma brought her kids, she watched them herself or hired a babysitter. Mom stopped trying to orchestrate family bonding moments that always seemed to end with me in charge of a pack of children. Sarah and I still haven't spoken. Sometimes I see her posts on social media, pictures of her boys growing up so fast. Part of me hopes that one day she'll realize what she did wrong, that she'll reach out first. Until then, I'm at peace with the distance.